I saw a man in a hazmat suit feeding pigeons in Times Square the other day. The Army has commandeered the Javits Center and turned it into a temporary hospital. I've been wondering about the root cause of this novel coronavirus pandemic. I never once thought it came from a bowl of Chinese bat soup. But could it have started with the accidental release of a modified bat virus from the Wuhan Institute of Virology? I guess that's a possibility. I've also seen some speculation from the Asian side that it could be a genetically engineered bioweapon created at Fort Detrick, which was intentionally seeded into the gathered crowd at the Military World Games held at Wuhan in October of 2019. I don't know what to believe. There's such a fog of unknowing around so much of this pandemic. But one thing I know for sure, it's crippling the city I love most in this world. The city where I've lived and worked for over 20 years. New York. So the city that never sleeps is now in a COVID-19 induced coma. We shelter at home, but our infection rates keep going up and up. New Yorkers are the new lepers, hunted down by the police for fleeing the city to more pussified places like Rhode Island. Before the lockdown, I had offers to go live with friends out of state, but I chose to stay in my apartment on the Upper West Side, just as I chose to stay after the World Trade Center attacks, after the anthrax scare, and after the 2008 financial coup d'etat. In my experience, if you love New York and stick with the city through the hard times, it'll love you back. But I worry about all the small business owners who've been shut down, and all the waitresses, bartenders, and gig workers who relied on them. A lot of those people won't be coming back. They're being forced into their own vanishing acts. In their place, the Fed-coddled big money vultures will swoop down and we'll get more of the generic, too-big-to-care company stores. And if the globalists get their way, and I end up having to show a biometric ID with a record of my vaccinations just so I can go shopping for fake GMO burgers at Whole Foods, then it might be time to leave.
It must be nice to disappear, to have a vanishing act, to always be moving forward and never looking back. How nice it is to disappear, float into a mist with a young lady on your arm, looking for a kiss. Looking for a kiss.
At 7 o'clock each night, the people of New York City go to their windows to clap and shout for the doctors, nurses, first responders, and all the other essential workers who've kept the city running. We can't forget the pandemic, but we can find ways to celebrate the fact that most of us are still alive. On Good Friday, I saw people in surgical masks playing frisbee under the trees in Riverside Park. I also saw masked and anonymous college grads jumping for camera-contrived joy on the steps of the Columbia University Library. Those college grads will be entering the worst labor market since the Great Depression. Many won't be able to find careers in their chosen fields with salaries decent enough to allow them to pay off their student loans.
Jeff Bezos has made $24 billion since the pandemic started. He's making record profits. He's worth $158 billion. And Jeff Bezos, we know Bezos is a good guy because, he fired a strike worker who didn't want to die stuffing envelopes for minimum wage at an Amazon service center in Staten Island. Chris Smalls led workers who demanded protective gear. They just didn't want to go to work and die from COVID-19. They just wanted protective gear. Jeff Bezos fired him.
This is our long night of 3,000-piece jigsaw puzzles. Social isolation has forced an end to most community activities. Was that intended? Planned for, perhaps, and then implemented by the same scheming people who attended Dark Winter, Crimson Contagion, and Event 201? Easter Sunday came and went with almost no one going to church. What we got instead was the Easter weekend release of a new Microsoft commercial featuring the red-gowned art world high priestess Marina Abramovic, pronging people toward a mixed reality, transhumanist future. Score one for the Satanists and those godless technocrats. Maybe that's the real value offered by places like Harvard and Yale. They provide gain of function to the progeny of wealthy families, just like those gene sequence splicing biolab scientists that made back coronaviruses more lethal. The Ivy League schools nurture and hone the evil genius skills of the inherently rapacious one-percenters who will end up exploiting the rest of us.
They're leaving Harvard back and forth with the CRISPR lab there, George Church's CRISPR lab. They're going back and forth from the BSL facility in Winnipeg. Again, these things are not bats flying to fish markets to then being eaten by pigs. These are human beings with test tubes, with courier status.
Sorry, I know that's too dark a view of higher education. And besides, some of the billionaire nerd kings like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg didn't even finish college. But Jeff Bezos did. He graduated from Princeton. And look at what a colossal dickhead he turned out to be. A perfect example of how sociopathy is rewarded with wealth and power. Long before Rome fell to the barbarians, it was sacked from within by a kakistocracy of privileged and entrenched elitist pricks, all of them experts at coming up with horseshit scams to fleece taxpayers, just like their modern-day counterparts. When lawyers and thieves control governments, they rewrite the laws to make their thievery legal.
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on flu vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
I've seen a lot of changes during my 20-plus years in Manhattan. I've had an office in Chinatown and a home just off Riverside Drive. This month, the city saw its largest spike in unemployed people ever. I had to count myself among them. There's been some talk about how the lockdown was absolutely essential so we could flatten the curve of ICU admissions. That may be true, but I think it's also being used as another excuse for elite plundering. Bail out all the over-leveraged bankers, rich shareholders, and stock-manipulating corporate CEOs. Screw everyone else. It's business as usual. Tapeworm economics. There's a question I've been asking myself lately. Does the world have to become an increasingly inhospitable place for most of us, just so the aspiring surveillance tech overlords like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates can have their grandiose dreams of success?
Last month, Bill Gates did an AMA where he suggested a coronavirus vaccine could come with a digital certificate. He passed it off as a faraway hypothetical concept and didn't mention the fact he had been investing in it. Nor did he mention that he wants to tattoo that digital certificate into people's skin with quantum dots that will be visible with smartphones. Essentially, he wants to tattoo a Microsoft logo on everyone. So it's not just herd immunity, but herd branding.
Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person, because you don't want people moving around the world where you'll have some countries that won't have it under control. Sadly, you don't want to completely block off the ability for those, people to go there and come back and move around. So eventually there will be digital immunity proof that will help facilitate the global reopening up.
This Zheng Li, we see her bragging openly in front of scientific consortiums, in front of large audiences, talking about going out and finding bats 600 miles away from Wuhan, bringing them to the lab, transfecting and cross-fecting these different species. We know the HIV gets into the bat virus, into the coronavirus. We know that potentially there's other things other than glycoprotein 120 and glycoprotein 41 and the G protein. The non-structural proteins inside the cell are also very homologous, some 100% with the bat virus, something very unusual that's just not found in most virus homologies. If you want signs of a cover-up and you don't remember Dr. DiCarli, he was one of two epidemiologists in the University of Milan, where the hotspot was, where all the people were dying, saying, hey, these cases appeared at the end of October. They appeared in all through November, all through December. So why is everyone covering these things up? Even the Chinese government covered up these deaths. So what's really happening? Remember, these people are at these universities, make no bones about the fact that they had these couriers going back and forth to Harvard, going back and forth to Dr. Lieber, who was investigating in this nanotechnology. Again, these things are not bats flying to fish markets to then being eaten by pigs. These are human beings with test tubes, with courier status. In Macho Benassi's case, the courier to the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. You can't get any higher in terms of courier status. So we have the Duke scientists at NUS talking about genomics, placing this directly at the end of October. It's not genetic mutation, it was engineered. We have the University of Cambridge talking about how this is now doing their genomic analysis, saying it's not an accident at all. We have the fact that there was, for almost the whole life of the virus, since the common cold, 58 years, no HIV ever appearing in coronavirus, all 6 strains that we know about. All of a sudden, as soon as we CRISPR the HIV virus, all of a sudden now we seem to be CRISPRing in these long strings of completely homologous strings into the DNA, variable section 1, 2, 3, and 4, just for the GP120 protein, not counting all the other proteins. So it just seems to be like almost a Reese's peanut butter cup of HIV and coronavirus. If you don't get the initial reports, then they rewrite the reports. They rewrite the history and say, oh no, it happened in February. After all the smart money's down and all the CEOs have sold all their stock, all the people have gotten their patents on vaccine candidates, then and only then are you allowed to write the story. And we see that with Fauci, right? He's telling people at the end of February 29th, hey, nothing to worry about here. Go out and spread it. We want a big spread. We want everybody to test positive. We want everybody to get the quantum dot. It's going to suit our purposes here, which is tag and trace.
Our aspiring overlords are convinced they can use the big data clouds hosted by Microsoft and Amazon Web Services to make even more money off us if data is harvested from brain-machine interfaces and nanotech implanted in our bodies. That's why they want to microchip us, like domestic pets.
Microsoft did something even creepier. They filed a patent. Publication number WO 2020-666. Abstract. Human body activity associated with a task provided to a user may be used in a mining process of a cryptocurrency system. Fuck that.
It's hard to tell if we'll ever get back to normal. My earlier movies feel like time capsules to me now, documenting a New York way of life that might never return. After the 2008 financial coup d'etat, at least we could still organize in the streets. But I checked in on Zuccotti Park the other day, where the Occupy Wall Street movement got its start. It was empty. Not a soul to be found. But I didn't see a lot of people hanging around the New York Stock Exchange either. What if most of what we're seeing in the mainstream news cycle is just gaslighting? I'm not suggesting that the bodies of New Yorkers aren't piling up in the city's morgues. COVID-19 is killing people right now. There's no doubt of that. I'm just wondering if there's a darker agenda at work beneath the cover of the pandemic. All the fear porn emanating from the military-industrial media intelligence complex these days seems a bit extreme, don't you think?
No. How can you know what you might think about at some point right now? Because I know what I might think about and what I won't think about. But you're a great interviewer, by the way.
In addition to the near total lockdown of our productive capacities, which will likely result in a deep recession or perhaps even a global depression, we also seem to be witnessing a controlled demolition of the social economy and our civil liberties. Are the new rules for social distancing designed to make it harder for us to talk to each other without being monitored? We should never assume that our conversations on Zoom or Office 365 are private. We should, in fact, assume that every big tech innovation that supposedly helps us to communicate more freely is actually a tool engineered to isolate us from the deepest and most genuine forms of human interaction. Anyway, you can't hug your kids or pet your dogs through a damn smartphone.
Good?
And you can't dance to music in the subway if the air is swarming with pathogens that could kill you if you happen to catch a whiff of a cough or a sneeze from anyone dancing less than 6 feet away. To be fully human, we need to be able to breathe the same air, to conspire with other people. But these days, it seems that most of the conspiring is being done by an ever more powerful predator class.
So there will be a surprise outbreak.
Will we ever rise up and overthrow those exploiters of humanity? I have my doubts, but like Philip K. Dick said, the ultimately heroic trait of ordinary people is that they'll say no to the tyrant and then calmly take the consequences of their resistance. If we can keep doing that, then we might survive this with our humanity intact.